galaxy laughed at humanity for asking for a seat at the table. So humanity built 6 planets and turned them into weapons instead. Stay with me, because what you're about to watch is the moment an entire galaxy realizes it made the worst mistake in its history. The galaxy had always seen Earth as a backwater, a blue-green rock clinging to the edges of civilized space, primitive compared to the sprawling empires that claimed dominion over the stars. Humanity had clawed its way out of its own dirt, shedding blood for centuries just to stand upright among the elder races. But the galaxy made one mistake, a mistake carved from arrogance, pride, and cruelty. They believed humans would remain weak forever. Commander Ryland stood on the observation deck of the Aegis Prime, the first of humanity's warforged giants. From orbit, it resembled a planet, a sphere of steel and alloy, crusted with weaponry, ringed by docking spires and shield emitters that glowed like volcanic scars. Entire cities thrived within its body. Workers, soldiers, engineers, families, all living inside what was both a home world and a weapon. He had been a child when the galaxy first mocked Earth's plea for peace. Humanity had petitioned for a seat in the Galactic Council. They were denied, laughed at, and ridiculed. The elders, the towering reptilians, the crystalline dynasties, the insectoid hives declared humanity too violent, too emotional, too undisciplined. When Earth persisted, when its diplomats dared to demand equality, the response had not been words. It had been fire. The Council sanctioned a disciplinary strike. 3 alien fleets burned through Mars and Europa, slaughtered colonies and crippled Earth's orbital stations. Billions cried out for mercy. None came. Ryland remembered the smoke that choked Earth's skies. He remembered the hollow faces of men who buried their families in the ashes of cities once filled with laughter. The galaxy thought the lesson was taught. Humanity would bow, but humans never bowed. They built, they remembered, they swore. And now, orbiting the edge of Sol, the Aegis Prime waited. A planet-sized warship birthed from grief, forged by rage, fueled by vengeance. "Status of the core?" Ryland asked, his voice low, carrying the authority of a man who had lived through both loss and rebirth. "Stabilized quantum reactors at 98%, weapons grid fully aligned." Lieutenant Harrow's tone carried restrained pride. He was younger, bred into this new era of humanity, an officer raised not on fear of the galaxy, but on the certainty that humans would never be prey again. Ryland nodded. His eyes lingered on the void beyond the observation windows where distant stars shimmered against blackness. Somewhere out there, the same races who had once treated his people as insects sat in their crystal palaces, blind to what was coming. "The Council doesn't believe this ship exists," Harrow said quietly. "Good," Ryland replied. "The first lesson of arrogance is silence before impact." The first lesson of arrogance is silence before impact. If you didn't feel that line in your chest, rewatch it, because that's the whole story in one sentence. Comment silence if you're locked in, and let's keep going, because this ship isn't even the scary part. He remembered the Council's sneering faces, how they had dismissed the rumors of human world ships. They had scoffed at the idea of a primitive race building something so vast, so impossible. To them, humanity was a joke. That joke was over. The Aegis Prime wasn't alone. In the shadows of gas giants and asteroid belts, 5 more warworlds were nearly complete. Entire planets reshaped, cored, and reforged into machines of war. Each was a fortress capable of tearing fleets apart, each housing millions who had abandoned Earth's soil to live within the belly of vengeance. Humanity had not built warships. They had built nations of steel, alive and ready to kill. Commander Harrow broke the silence. "Council fleets are moving near Titan's edge, scouts only. They're watching us." "Let them watch," Ryland muttered, his jaw tightened, his hands curled behind his back until his knuckles cracked. "They'll see a shadow, a whisper. They'll call it human desperation. And when we move, they'll see their arrogance die." Silence lingered between them, broken only by the low hum of engines that pulsed through the deck like the heartbeat of a god. The galaxy had laughed at Earth. It had called humanity fragile, weak, impulsive, violent. Now humanity would show the truth. Fragile things learn to endure. Weak things learn to fight. Impulsive things grow into predators. And violence was the one language the galaxy had always understood. Ryland turned from the glass, his reflection swallowed by the glow of the warship systems. Signal the forge worlds, prepare the fleet. His voice was iron, unshaken, carved by fury that had never dulled. The time for begging was over. The time for fear was over. The Galax. Wise Arrogance had stood unbroken for centuries. Tonight, in the cold dark of space, it would finally collapse. Tonight, it would finally collapse. We're about to cut to the actual Galactic Council, the exact people who laughed at humanity, completely unaware of what's coming. If you want to see Arrogance walk straight into a wall, comment incoming and keep watching. The Galactic Council chamber was built to intimidate. A structure of crystal towers spiraling into the void, its assembly floor stretched wide enough to host thousands of delegates. Each race's envoy carried themselves with pride, shimmering with the confidence of species that had ruled the stars long before Earth had lit its first fire. From the center dais, High Consul Zith of the Kavari spoke, his voice smooth and dripping with disdain. His reptilian form gleamed in ceremonial scales, polished as if vanity could cover the blood his people had spilled across human colonies decades ago. Reports of these so-called planet ships are nothing but human propaganda. We face a desperate species clinging to survival, throwing scraps of metal together and praying to frighten us. His slitted eyes gleamed as he swept his gaze across the hall. We have nothing to fear from a race too primitive to harness stable wormhole travel without collapsing their own fleets. Ripples of laughter spread through the chamber. Representatives of crystalline dynasties chimed a sound like glass breaking. Insectoid delegations clicked their mandibles in mocking rhythm, and Avan rulers flapped their wings in open scorn, but not all joined the chorus. From a corner seat, the Shuran ambassador leaned forward, feathers twitching with unease. The Shuran had long been neutral, observers of conflict rather than participants, yet their scouts had witnessed something near Saul that gnawed at their nerves. My fleets confirm unusual activity near the human system, the ambassador said, his voice sharp. Not mere starships, entire planetoids hollowed and reinforced. If these are true, they dwarf anything the Council fleets can field. The chamber erupted in derision. Lies to stir fear, snarled a crystalline matriarch. Humans barely hold their own moons together, and you would have us believe they build worlds of war. But the Shuran held their silence, unwilling to argue further. They had seen enough shadows in the void to know Arrogance was a blinding sickness. They're laughing right now at the exact thing that's about to end them. This is called dramatic irony, and it's the reason this story works. You already know what they don't. If you're enjoying that feeling, let me know in the comments because it's about to pay off hard. Meanwhile, far from the polished chambers of Arrogance, Commander Ryland stood inside the war core of the Aegis Prime. Here, the heart of the beast pulsed with energy, its reactors glowing in vast caverns that stretched like cathedrals. Tens of thousands of engineers worked around him, men and women hardened by loss, their faces carved by determination. Every one of them had bled, had buried loved ones under alien fire. Now they bled iron instead. Council fleets massing at Titan's edge, Harrow reported, striding toward Ryland with a slate of tactical feeds. Mostly Kavari warbands, they're sending a message. They're testing us, Ryland muttered, eyes narrowing at the hollow projection of enemy formations. Dozens of sleek warships circled near Saturn's shadow, their energy signatures pulsing like predators scenting prey. Should we engage? Harrow asked. Ryland's jaw tightened. He thought of Earth, scarred but unbroken. He thought of the children who played in the corridors of Aegis Prime, their laughter echoing against steel walls that could withstand planetary bombardments. He thought of the Council's laughter, their voices dripping with arrogance as they condemned humanity to ashes. Not yet, he said. Let them grow bold. Let them believe this ship is hollow steel and bluster. Then we'll show them what lies inside it. The cavalry commander aboard the flagship Vorkos paced the bridge, his scaled claws tapping the metal floor with each step. He was a veteran of countless wars, a butcher who had overseen the burning of Europa and the slaughter of Martian colonies. To him, humanity was nothing more than a stubborn infestation. "Magnify the target," he ordered. The hollow screen shifted, revealing the Aegis Prime, a vast sphere of steel orbiting in silence. Its surface glimmered with fortress lines, vast weapon ports, and the faint shimmer of shields that glowed like a second atmosphere. The cavalry crew scoffed. "Pathetic," one growled. "They hollowed a rock and called it a warship. Primitive theatrics," another sneered. "One focused barrage and it will crumble." The commander bared his fangs in satisfaction. "Then let us end this delusion. Ready all batteries." Weapons primed across the fleet. Energy pulses building in the black void. The commander's clawed hand lifted, ready to strike. His hand is literally about to give the order to fire on what he thinks is a hollow rock. He has no idea. Comment skull right now if you know exactly what's about to happen to him. This is the moment the entire galaxy's worldview breaks. But then the sphere moved. Not a drift, not the sluggish turn of a dead rock. It moved with purpose, with speed no planetoid should possess. Entire plates shifted across its surface, massive ports yawning open like the mouths of titans. Inside, weapon arrays the size of mountains stirred awake. Rail cannons spanning kilometers aligned, plasma lances hummed, and missile silos groaned as their payloads locked into place. The cavalry laughter faltered. "What is this?" the commander whispered. The Aegis Prime spoke. A transmission cut across every channel, filling the alien ships with a voice that carried centuries of fury. "This is Commander Ryland of the United Terran Warfleet. You burned our homes. You slaughtered our children. You laughed at our pain. We do not ask for mercy. We give none. Leave now or face humanity's answer." The silence that followed was colder than the void itself. The cavalry commander snarled. "Fire!" Energy beams lanced from alien ships, streaking toward the Aegis Prime in a barrage meant to shatter moons. The void lit with fury, but the beams met the Warworlds' shields and fizzled like sparks against an ocean. Then humanity answered. The Aegis Prime unleashed its wrath. A rail cannon fired. Its round, the size of a skyscraper, accelerated to near light speed. It tore through the first cavalry battleship as if it were paper, splitting the vessel in half before it had time to scream. Plasma lances followed, carving through enemy formations with surgical cruelty. Entire warbands dissolved into fire, their wreckage scattering across Saturn's shadow. The cavalry fleet panicked. Ships scattered. Commanders barked desperate orders, but the war world pursued like a predator, finally unchained. Missiles streaked from its surface, each carrying enough firepower to gut a city. They hunted ships through evasive maneuvers, detonating in blossoms of flame that painted the void. On the bridge of the Vorkos, chaos erupted. "They're tearing us apart," shouted an officer. "This can't be possible. No species builds this," another cried. The commander's scales dulled with fear. He had laughed once at human desperation. Now he watched it transform into vengeance incarnate. "Retreat," he roared. "Retreat before we're all the last word never came." A rail slug ripped through the flagship, splitting it open like a carcass. The commander was thrown. That's just one ship. Humanity has 6 of these Warworlds total. If your jaw is on the floor right now, comment 5 more, because what's coming next is a scene where humanity finally shows the galaxy the full scale of what they built. Back aboard the Aegis Prime, Ryland stood in silence as tactical feeds showed the carnage. Wreckage drifted across Saturn's rings. The once proud cavalry fleet reduced to scattered embers. "Casualties?" he asked. "Minimal," Harrow reported, his voice odd. "Shields held, our counter-strikes hit 98% efficiency." Ryland nodded, though his face carried no joy. "Send survivors back. Leave their wreckage untouched. Let them crawl home and tell the Council what they've seen." Harrow hesitated. "You're letting them live." "They won't live," Ryland said coldly. "They'll remember, and their fear will do more than our weapons." He turned toward the observation glass once more, watching debris glitter against Saturn's shadow. His reflection stared back, scarred, tired, but unbroken. The galaxy had wanted humanity to die. Instead, it had created monsters of steel and men who no longer believed in mercy. This was only the beginning, Ryland whispered to himself. The galaxy wanted us to kneel. Now it will learn how far we rise when forced to our knees. News spread faster than light. Survivors limped back to Council space, their transmissions fractured, their voices trembling with terror. World ships, planet weapons, unstoppable. The arrogance that had filled the Council's halls began to fracture. Whispers spread like infection. If the humans had truly built such monstrosities, then no empire was safe. No fleet was strong enough. But still, arrogance clung to them. They cannot build more than one, High Consul Zith insisted, though his scales had dulled with unease. It is an anomaly. We will assemble a grand fleet and erase this insult. Yet deep in the void, humanity's forges glowed. 5 more war worlds stirred awake, engines thundering as entire civilizations uprooted themselves into the bellies of vengeance. The galaxy had mocked humanity's hunger for survival. Now it would choke on it. We will assemble a grand fleet. Famous last words. What they're about to gather is the largest armada in galactic history, and it's about to walk straight into something. Gee, they cannot even comprehend. Stay for this next part. The council chamber no longer echoed with laughter. Where once arrogance had filled the crystal spires with scornful voices, now unease threaded every word. The Kavari survivors had returned, their broken fleets limping into orbit like crippled hounds. Their reports spilled across the chamber. Ships gutted by weapons no alien mind could have conceived. Entire squadrons erased in the span of minutes. Commanders screaming into the void as they died. The descriptions were so vivid, so undeniable that even the most arrogant delegates shifted in their seats. It cannot be true, hissed the crystalline matriarch, her jagged form glinting with unease. Humans are vermin, they cannot construct such monstrosities. They can, the Shuran ambassador said flatly, feathers bristling with restrained fear. I warned you. My scouts witnessed the hollowing of moons, the forging of something vast beyond comprehension. The humans have turned worlds into weapons. They've made a mockery of your pride. The chamber erupted in shouts, each race arguing, each voice desperate to cling to denial. The insectoid viceroy screeched, mandibles clacking in fury. Then we exterminate them now. No delays, no hesitation. A combined armada will scour Saul clean of life. It must be done before these aberrations multiply. The crystalline matriarch slammed her jagged claws against the podium. And risk our fleets being shattered as the Kavari were. No, we must wait, study, and discover their weakness. High Consul Zith silenced the uproar with a hiss. His reptilian eyes glowed like dying embers, his arrogance still clinging like a dying flame. We will not cower before primitives, he snarled. Humanity has always been rash, emotional, chaotic. They've managed to construct one abomination, a fluke of desperation and stolen technology. It will not stand against the might of the united galaxy. The council leaned forward, listening. I propose this, Zith continued, his voice slicing through the chamber. We assemble a grand fleet. Every empire, every dominion, every dynasty will contribute their finest warships. We will crush humanity in one strike so devastating that no future species dares challenge the council again. Let this be their lesson and their end. Silence followed. Then one by one voices rose in agreement. The insectoids clacked their approval. The crystalline dynasties chimed. The Avan empires screeched in support. Even the hesitant Shuran gave a reluctant nod. And so the largest fleet in galactic history was conceived. Over 50,000 warships would be gathered. Dreadnoughts, carriers, swarm fleets, fortress cruisers. A storm to drown a single species. Arrogance had faltered, but it had not yet died. 50,000 ships against what they think is one lucky ship. But they don't know the truth yet. Comment how many war worlds you think humanity actually has before the next scene reveals the real number. Deep within Saul's shadow, Aegis Prime floated like a silent god. Commander Ryland stood once more on the observation deck, watching stars scatter across blackness. Behind him, the hum of the ship was steady, a heartbeat of iron and fire. Harrow entered, face grim. Scouts confirm it. The Council is assembling a fleet, not just one species, all of them. It'll be the largest force the galaxy has ever launched. Ryland didn't turn. He had expected this. The moment the cavalry fleet had limped away, the response was inevitable. Pride would not allow the galaxy to ignore humanity's defiance. "How many?" he asked. 50,000 warships, maybe more," Harrow said. His voice faltered, but his eyes stayed steady. "Every empire is contributing. They mean to erase us." Ryland allowed the silence to stretch. Outside the glass, Saturn's rings glittered faintly, dust and stone circling endlessly. He thought of Earth far below, of children playing under skies that once burned. He thought of the graves his people had dug, the tears they had shed, the fury that had kept them alive. "Then let them come," Ryland finally said. Harrow blinked. "Sir." Ryland turned at last, and the fire in his eyes silenced any doubt. "They believe we built one war world. They think this is all humanity has to give. Let them bring their fleets. Let them gather their strength. When they arrive, they'll discover a truth they cannot comprehend." He raised a hand, and the hollow screen flickered to life. Not one sphere filled its projection, but six. 6 planet-sized warships, each gleaming with the scars of creation. Each forged from moons, planetoids, and stolen fragments of asteroids, hollowed and reforged into steel nations. The Aegis Prime was no anomaly. It was the firstborn of a new species. Harrow's breath caught. "They're complete." "Nearly," Ryland said. "The Oblivion Crown rises from Neptune's shadow, the Iron Requiem from Ganymede, the Leviathan from the bones of Ceres. Each one carries millions within. Engine. Soldiers, families. Each one ready to bleed iron for humanity's survival. We are not one ship, Harrow. We are a fleet of worlds." Harrow's chest swelled, pride battling with awe. "The galaxy has no idea." "They will," Ryland said, his voice low and sharp. "And by the time they realize, it will be too late. 6 war worlds. The galaxy has 50,000 ships coming for one. Comment 6 versus 50,000 if you think that's insane odds, because we're about to watch that exact fight happen. Don't leave now." Weeks passed. The galaxy's grand fleet assembled in the Black Gulf near the Council's core systems. Ship after ship arrived, filling the void until stars themselves seemed to vanish beneath the weight of so much arrogance. The insectoids brought swarms that blotted entire sectors. The crystalline dynasties contributed fortress ships that gleamed like shattered suns. The cavalry brought their dreadnoughts, desperate for vengeance against the humiliation they had suffered. And all across the fleet, commanders whispered the same belief, that this would be swift, merciless, final. Humanity would be a footnote in history. But whispers of doubt spread. The survivors of Saturn spoke of impossible weapons, of shields that swallowed whole barges, of cannons that tore ships apart with a single strike. Their warnings were dismissed, but unease lingered. One Shuran admiral stared into the fleet's gathering, his feathers twitching. "We march into fire," he murmured. No one listened. Back in Sol, humanity prepared. Inside Aegis Prime, Ryland addressed his commanders. They stood in a vast chamber carved into the Warworld's heart, its walls lined with banners of steel and cloth alike, symbols of Earth, Mars, Luna, and every colony that had bled for survival. "Men," Ryland began, his voice carrying the weight of every scar humanity bore. "The galaxy believes we are prey. They believe our worldships are desperation, a last gasp before extinction. They do not see what we have become. They cannot imagine what their cruelty has created." He paced slowly, his eyes burning as they swept across the faces of soldiers, pilots, and leaders forged in fire. "They burned our homes. They mocked our dead. They slaughtered our children and called it discipline. Tonight they come to finish what they began. They believe their fleets will erase us, but we are not a race waiting to be erased. We are a species that crawled from the mud, fought tooth and nail through our own chaos, and stood tall in the face of gods. We were made for this fight." A growl of agreement rippled through the chamber. They will bring 50,000 ships, Ryland continued, his voice a rising storm. We will bring 6 worlds, 6 nations of iron, 6 fortresses of vengeance, 6 gods of war. Let them come. Let them see what humanity builds when it has nothing left to lose. And when the void runs red with their arrogance, they will remember us. Not as prey, not as weaklings, but as the predators who broke their empires. The roar that followed shook the chamber. Harrow stepped forward, fists clenched. And if we fall, sir, Ryland's gaze hardened, then we fall as men who never bowed, but mark my words, we will not fall, not today, not ever again. This is it, the fleet is about to arrive at Sol, and the battle everyone's been waiting for starts right now. Do not scroll away for the next few minutes. Comment, crossed ready before it starts. At the edge of Sol, the galaxy's grand fleet arrived. Stars blotted out as alien warships filled the darkness. 50,000 ships glowing with weapons, shields, and engines that shook the void. From the flagship Solaris Crown, High Consul Zith surveyed the battlefield, his eyes gleaming with hatred. There, he hissed, the human war world. Their delusion ends today. The Aegis Prime hung silent in the void, a lone sphere of steel dwarfed by the armada's vastness. To the Council fleet, it appeared as arrogance made flesh, one ship against an empire. Destroy it, Zith ordered. The galaxy's greatest fleet surged forward, weapons blazing, and then the void itself shifted. From Neptune's shadow, the Oblivion Crown emerged, its steel surface glowing like a second sun. From Ganymede, the Iron Requiem. From Ceres, the Leviathan. From Pluto, the Hellborn. From the scattered asteroids of the Kuiper Belt, the Titan's wrath. One by one, they revealed themselves, surrounding Sol like titans rising from the abyss. 6 war worlds, each the size of moons, each bristling with weapons that gleamed like the wrath of gods. The galaxy's fleet faltered. On the Solaris Crown, Zith's claws dug into the railing. Impossible, he whispered, his arrogance cracking into terror. But it was not impossible. It was human, and humanity was done kneeling. There it is. 6 against 50,000, but you already know these aren't just ships, they're nations. Comment, not impossible, human right now, and let's watch this fleet learn that lesson. The void boiled with fire. 50. 0 alien warships advanced in perfect formation, a tide of arrogance and fury sweeping into Sol. Their engines burned bright enough to wash the stars from the sky, their weapons charged with enough power to erase planets. Every empire had sent its finest. Dreadnoughts armed with sun-splitting cannons, crystalline fortress ships that gleamed like fractured stars, insectoid swarm vessels that buzzed across the dark like locusts. It was a storm of steel and pride, all bent toward humanity's annihilation. At their head, High Consul Zith of the Kavari sneered as the war worlds emerged from the shadows. 1, then 2, then 6. Colossal spheres of steel bristling with weapons, each the size of moons. They dwarfed the alien fleets that had once mocked them. They radiated menace. They made the void itself tremble. And yet Zith's arrogance clung like poison. They will fall, he hissed. Even titans can drown beneath the tide. Inside Aegis Prime, Commander Ryland stood on the command deck. The entire ship thrummed beneath his boots, a living heartbeat of steel and fire. Tactical projections filled the air around him, rendering the void in ruthless detail. 50,000 ships against 6 war worlds. It was madness. It was impossible. It was exactly what humanity had been forged for. Enemy fleets advancing, Harrow reported, his voice steady but tight. They're splitting their forces, crystalline fortress ships on our left flank, insectoid swarms pushing center, Kavari dreadnoughts straight ahead. Ryland's eyes burned as he studied the map. He saw not just ships but memories. Burning colonies, screaming civilians, the hollow eyes of men who had buried their families. He saw Earth's pain etched into every enemy vessel. They think they're fighting ships, he said quietly. They're wrong. They're fighting nations. They're fighting every man, woman, and child they tried to erase. He turned to his officers. Signal the fleet. Open the void. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity builds when the universe tries to kill it. The first blow fell from the Council's armada. Beams of energy cut across the void, lancing from thousands of ships at once. The sky lit like 1,000 suns exploding, fire washing across space in a storm of annihilation. The 6 Warworlds vanished beneath the fury. To the Council, it seemed victory had come in the first strike. But when the fire cleared, the Warworlds still stood. Their shields shimmered, oceans of energy bending the storm away. The Aegis Prime glowed like a living star, its surface unbroken, its hull unscarred. Their entire first strike did nothing. Nothing. Now it's humanity's turn, and this next part is the reason people keep coming back to this story. Comment unscarred if that line gave you chills. Then humanity answered. Rail cannons fired. Each slug the size of mountains accelerated to near light speed. They ripped through alien ships as though they were made of glass. Dreadnoughts split apart. Fortress ships shattered. Swarm vessels scattered like ash in the wind. The Iron Requiem unleashed a storm of plasma lances, beams of blue fire that seethed through entire fleets in sweeping arcs. Ships melted, collapsing in on themselves, their crews screaming into silence. The Leviathan opened its missile silos, disgorging a swarm of warheads that streaked into the void like meteors. Each one detonated with enough force to tear a city apart. Alien formations crumbled, their discipline shattered as ships broke formation in panic. On the Oblivion Crown, orbital strike cannons awakened, each blast tearing through shields and armor alike, ripping cruisers into fragments that tumbled through space like burning bones. Humanity's vengeance had begun. The Council's fleet reeled, but Arrogance refused to die easily. The crystalline fortress ships regrouped, forming a wall of glittering shields. Their combined barriers locked together, pushing forward like a glacier of light. Behind them, insectoid swarms darted in tight formation, pouring volleys of kinetic fire that peppered the Warworld's shields. The Hellborn staggered beneath the assault. Its shields flared, buckling for a heartbeat, and insectoid ships swarmed toward the gap. Thousands of them, small but vicious, crawled across its hull, seeking weak points to tear open. Inside the Hellborn, alarms screamed. Entire cities housed within its belly quaked under the assault. Families clung to each other, children crying in the steel corridors as soldiers rushed past, weapons in hand, ready to repel borders if the swarms broke through. "Commander, the Hellborn is pinned," Harrow shouted. Ryland's jaw tightened. He remembered Europa burning, Martian colonies collapsing under alien fire. He remembered the helplessness. He would not let it repeat. "Signal the Titan's wrath," he barked. "Unleash the maelstrom." The Titan's wrath was the youngest of the Warworlds, forged from the bones of a dozen asteroids. Its commanders had begged to test the maelstrom cannon, a weapon so unstable it risked tearing space itself. Until now, Ryland had denied them. Now he gave the order. From the Titan's wrath the cannon roared, space twisted, bending like fabric beneath a giant's hand. A storm of energy spiraled outward, shredding swarms, ripping crystalline barriers apart like tissue. Alien ships were hurled into one another, their hulls collapsing under impossible gravitational stress. The insected swarm vanished in a single scream. Their fleets torn into fragments that burned as they fell into Saturn's rings. The crystalline fortress ships cracked, their perfect formations broken, their arrogance shattered. The Hellborn's shields flared back to life. The war world roared its defiance, its cannons opening fire again. A weapon so dangerous they were scared to even use it, and it just turned the tide of the entire war. If you want to see the exact moment the Council realizes they've already lost, keep watching, it's right after this. On the Council flagship, chaos erupted. "They're destroying us," cried an officer, crystalline shards scattering from his trembling form. "Impossible," Zith snarled, his claws tearing grooves into the railing. "This is impossible. No species builds such weapons." But the void gave no mercy to his arrogance. Around him, reports flooded in. Fortress ships lost, dreadnoughts shattered, swarms obliterated. The galaxy's greatest fleet was being broken piece by 6 human worlds. Inside Aegis Prime, Ryland's eyes burned as he watched the tactical map shift. Alien formations shattered under human fire, their once proud fleets collapsing into chaos. Yet the cost was mounting. The iron requiem burned under crystalline bombardment. The Leviathan's shields flickered as swarm remnants tore at its flanks. The void was littered with wreckage, both human and alien. Millions were dying with every passing moment. "Oh," Ryland said, his voice steady despite the fire in his veins. "What do you see?" Harrow swallowed hard, his eyes on the carnage. "I see the galaxy's pride breaking. I see them realizing what they've unleashed." Ryland nodded. "And I see the future. Either we win here or humanity dies forever. There is no second chance." He turned to the comms officer. "Open the line to all ships." Static filled the chamber, then cleared. His voice cut across the void, carried to every human ear within the fleet. "Men of Earth, you know why we fight. They burned our homes. They slaughtered our children. They mocked us, laughed at us, and called us vermin. Today they bring the greatest fleet in history to erase us from existence. But we are not vermin. We are not prey. We are the sons of Earth, the warriors of Sol. And tonight the galaxy learns what happens when it tries to kill humanity. Fight, bleed, endure, and show them that the predators have come." A roar answered him, carried across comms, across Warworlds, across steel corridors filled with men ready to die for vengeance. That speech is the kind of thing you replay. Comment your favorite line from it before I show you what happens when humanity stops holding back completely. Because up next is the moment they unleash everything they have. The war raged on. The Council's fleet regrouped, their desperation bleeding through. Fortress ships rammed forward, crystalline shields blazing, while Kavari dreadnoughts poured every weapon they had into the Warworlds. For every alien ship destroyed, another took its place. Numbers pressed down like a tide. Inside Aegis Prime, the deck shook as impacts hammered the shields. Energy flared across the hull, burning bright enough to blind. Ryland gripped the railing, teeth clenched, feeling the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders. "Hull integrity dropping to 70%, shouted an officer. "Reactor strain critical on the Leviathan," another cried. "Commander, we can't hold this forever," Harrow roared over the din. Ryland's eyes narrowed. He saw the Council fleet pressing harder, their desperation growing. He saw the cost mounting, human lives spilling into the void, and he knew this battle was more than survival. It was a message. "We don't need to hold forever," he said. "We only need to break them." His hand slammed down on the console. "Unleash the Fury Protocol. All Warworlds, fire everything." The void erupted. Every cannon, every missile, every plasma lance, every rail gun roared in unison. The Warworlds poured their fury into the galaxy's grand fleet. Thousands of alien ships vanished in a storm of fire and steel, detonating in blossoms of light that turned the void into day. The galaxy's arrogance collapsed in that moment, and the war had only just begun. The war had only just begun. That's not a victory lap, that's a warning. What comes next is the cost of that win, and it's a lot heavier than you'd expect. Comment if you're ready to see what it actually took. The battlefield was a graveyard, wreckage flowa. Ted through the void in endless silence. A sea of twisted steel and shattered hulls that stretched from Saturn's shadow to the edge of Sol. Alien ships drifted like corpses, their shattered remains glowing faintly as fire flickered across them. Bodies, human and alien alike, spun slowly in the dark, their forms frozen in the cold emptiness of space. The Warworlds hung in the center of it all, scarred but alive. Their shields flickered, their hulls cracked and battered, their weapons still glowing with residual fire. They were not unscathed. The iron requiem had lost a third of its outer plating. The Leviathan's reactor burned dangerously hot, forcing whole sectors of the ship to shut down. The Hellborn bled atmosphere from a dozen breaches, its surface scorched and blackened. But they stood, and around them the galaxy's greatest fleet lay in ruins. Inside Aegis Prime, the command deck stank of sweat and smoke. Officers slumped in their chairs, their faces hollow, eyes bloodshot from hours of unrelenting battle. Reports streamed in. Casualties, damage, losses. "Final counts?" Ryland asked, his voice low but steady. Harrow hesitated, then forced himself to answer. "Total Council fleet destroyed or crippled 32,000 ships. Approximately 12,000 confirmed fled into hyperspace. Survivors scattered. Our forces," he faltered. Say it, Ryland pressed. Harrow's jaw tightened. The Requiem lost nearly 200,000 civilians in the breach. The Hellborn lost 3 entire habitat domes. Total human dead across the fleet, 600,000. The words hung heavy. The chamber was silent but for the hum of failing consoles and the faint crackle of burning wires. 600,000 lives, men, women, children gone in the span of a few hours. Families ripped apart. Homes lost again, history repeating in blood. 600,000 people. This is the part of the story that makes it more than just an action scene, because winning cost them everything they were trying to protect. Comment 600000 to mark that you're still here for the part that actually matters. Ryland closed his eyes. For a moment the weight threatened to crush him. He saw their faces, the families who had trusted him, the soldiers who had fought under his command, the innocents who had screamed in the dark as fire consumed their homes. But he did not break. He could not. 600,000 dead, he said softly. And the galaxy still believes we will bow. He opened his eyes, steel hard. Signal all Warworlds, begin recovery, gather the wreckage, salvage what we can, and honor the dead. Every life lost will be remembered. Every death will become a weapon. Yes, Commander, Harrow said, though grief lined his face. The council chamber was no longer a place of arrogance. It was chaos. Delegates screamed at one another, their voices shrill with panic and fury. The insectoid viceroy clattered across the floor, shrieking accusations at the crystalline dynasties. Avan empires squawked for retreat, their wings trembling with fear. Even the Kavari, once the proudest of the council, stood broken, their surviving fleets crippled, their arrogance melted into shame. We lost 30,000 ships, one delegate roared. An entire generation of our fleets gone in a single battle. They built 6 Warworlds, another shrieked. 6. How many more lurk in the shadows? This was not supposed to happen, whispered a crystalline matriarch, her jagged form trembling. We were promised a swift victory. Now the galaxy whispers that the council has lost its power. At the center dais, High Consul Zith struggled to maintain composure, but his scales dulled with fear. The battle reports replayed again and again in his mind. Ships shredded like paper, fortress cruisers torn apart by impossible weapons, the arrogance of his fleets crushed under human steel. This is not the end, he snarled, slamming his claws against the podium. We are the galaxy's rulers. We will not be undone by vermin from a single rock. But even as he spoke, doubt spread through the chamber. For centuries, the council had ruled through fear, arrogance, and overwhelming power. Now their fleets had been broken by 6 ships. 6. The illusion of invincibility was gone. In the shadows of the chamber, the Shuran ambassador remained silent, feathers sleek against his body. He had warned them. He had seen what humanity was becoming, and now the council was bleeding from its arrogance. They will not stop, the ambassador murmured, unheard amid the chaos. Humans do not forgive, they endure, and when they endure long enough, they conquer. The Shuran ambassador is the only one in that entire room who understands what's actually happening. If you've been paying attention, you already know he's right. Comment, they endure. And let's go check on the human side of this, because it's not what you'd expect. Back aboard Aegis Prime, Ryland walked the corridors of the inner habitats. They were filled with grief. Families clutched each other, their faces streaked with tears. Soldiers stood in silence, their armor blackened, their eyes hollow. Entire sectors were draped in mourning banners, the names of the dead etched onto steel walls. Ryland paused before one such wall. Thousands of names gleamed across it, each one carved hastily by grieving hands. He raised a hand, pressing his palm to the cold steel. A boy no older than 10 approached him, eyes red from crying. His small hands clutched a photograph of a man in uniform. "My father," the boy whispered. "He was on the Requiem. They said he died when the dome broke." Ryland looked down at the boy, his throat tightening. He had no words to offer, no comfort, no lies of peace. He bent down, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. "Your father didn't die for nothing," Ryland said softly. "Every life taken from us makes us stronger. Every death sharpens the blade we will drive into the galaxy's heart. Remember him, carry him, and know this. When the galaxy looks into the void, it will see your father's face staring back at them." The boy nodded, tears streaming, clutching the photograph tighter. Ryland stood, his eyes burning. Grief was fuel. Humanity's pain had always been its strength, and now that strength would reshape the galaxy. That scene with the boy is the emotional core of this whole story. Comment Candle, if that one hit you. Everything after this point is Ryland turning that grief into something the entire galaxy will remember. Keep watching. The Warworlds began their grim work. Teams swarmed across the wreckage fields, salvaging alien technology, recovering weapons and reactor cores, dragging shattered hulls back into their bays. Bodies were gathered, both human and alien. Human dead were mourned, honored, remembered. Alien corpses were burned in silence, their ashes scattered into the void. Engineers tore apart captured vessels, studying their systems, pulling knowledge from their ruins. Every piece of alien arrogance would be reforged into human fire. Within weeks, the Warworlds began to heal. Holes were patched, shields reforged, weapons rebuilt. The dead were buried in the heart of the ships, their names etched into iron walls, their memory carved into the steel. And above it all, Ryland prepared. On the command deck, Harrow stood with a slate of data. His voice was grim. "The Council is fractured, sir. Their fleets are crippled. Some empires are pulling back, hiding their strength. Others scream for vengeance, but there's one truth: they won't stop. They'll rebuild. They'll come again." "They will," Ryland said, "because arrogance doesn't die with one battle. It festers until it's cut out." "What do we do then?" Harrow asked. Ryland turned, his eyes hard as iron. "We stop waiting for them to come. We take the war to them. We break their empires one by one until the galaxy understands that humanity is not prey, not weak, not expendable. We will make them fear our name." Harrow's chest tightened. He had followed Ryland for years through loss and fire, through victories and scars. But this was something more. "Sir," Harrow said quietly, "you're talking about extermination." Ryland's gaze did not falter. "I'm talking about survival. They tried to erase us. They failed. Now we erase their arrogance. If it takes burning their empires to ash, then so be it." That's the line where this story stops being about survival and starts being about something darker. Comment if you think Ryland is still the good guy at this point, because it's about to get a lot harder to answer that question. Far away in hidden chambers across the galaxy, whispers spread. The Council had lost. Humanity had stood against the greatest fleet in history and survived. More than survived. They had triumphed. The illusion of alien superiority was shattered, and fear began to creep where arrogance once lived. Some empires began to question their loyalty to the Council. Others whispered of treaties of peace with humanity before the fire spread too far, but the Council would not yield. Pride ran too deep. And in the shadows, Ryland sharpened his vengeance. Humanity would not wait to be attacked again. The time for defense was over. The time for conquest had begun. The Warworlds moved. For years, humanity had defended. They had endured blows, buried their dead, rebuilt their shattered homes, but defense had cost them too much. Too many graves on Earth's scarred soil, too many cities burned on Mars, too many colonies turned to ash. The Council had forced humanity to fight for survival. Now humanity would fight for dominance. From Sol, 6 worlds of steel ignited their engines. The void trembled as the Aegis Prime, Iron Requiem, Leviathan, Oblivion Crown, Hellborn, and Titan's Wrath burned across the stars. They were not fleets. They were nations of war. Each carried millions. Each bristled with weapons that had already shattered the illusion of alien superiority. Their destination, Kavari space. On the bridge of the Aegis Prime, Commander Ryland stood tall, his eyes fixed on the shifting projection of the void. The Kavari had been the first to mock humanity, the first to burn their colonies, the first to teach the galaxy how to sneer at Earth. Their fleets had bled at Saturn, but their worlds still stood, worlds that had once celebrated the slaughter of humans. "They wanted us to kneel," Ryland said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Instead, we march into their skies. They thought us prey, Today we become the hunters." Harrow's face was grim. "Scouts report the Kavari have fortified their home world. Orbital stations, planetary shields, fleet yards, they expect us." Ryland's jaw tightened. "Good. Let them gather. Let them believe their walls will save them. We'll tear down every shield, burn every fortress, and show the galaxy what happens when you strike Earth." Humanity's about to attack an entire alien homeworld for the first time. Not a fleet, a planet with civilians on it. This is where the story gets morally complicated, and I want to know what you think before it happens. Comment your prediction. The Kavari home system burned bright with defenses. Planetary shields shimmered across their home world. Vast orbital rings bristled with cannons, and their fleets swarmed in tight formation. Billions of civilians watched the skies, their arrogance still unbroken. They had mocked humans for decades, and even now they clung to the belief that their empire was unshakable. The Warworlds arrived in silence. 6 spheres of steel emerged from hyperspace like gods of iron. Their shadows swallowed suns. The Kavari fleets moved first. Thousands of warships surged forward, weapons blazing, energy beams cutting across the void. The skies lit with fire, but humanity did not flinch. The Oblivion Crown fired first, its rail cannons hurling slugs that split dreadnoughts in two. The Leviathan loosed swarms of missiles that shredded swarms into ash. The Iron Requiem swept plasma lances across entire formations, carving ships apart like kindling. And the Aegis Prime, humanity's first war world, unleashed its fury. Planet-cracking cannons roared, tearing orbital stations into molten wreckage, blasting through planetary shields as though they were glass. The void became a slaughterhouse. Kavari commanders screamed orders, but their fleets collapsed under the storm. Thousands of ships died in minutes, their wreckage raining down into the atmosphere of their own worlds. Planetary shields flickered, cracked, and fell. And then, for the first time in history, human weapons struck an alien home world. Cities burned. From orbit, plasma fire rained down, carving scars into continents. Fleet yards detonated in blossoms of fire, their wreckage scattering across oceans. Towers that had stood for centuries collapsed into rubble as orbital strikes shattered their foundations. The Kavari screamed for mercy. Civilians fled into the streets, their arrogance melting into terror as the sky turned red. "They're bombing civilians now. That's a real shift from the last battle." Comment whether you think this crosses a line for you as a viewer. I genuinely think this is the moment the story wants you to feel uncomfortable. Inside Aegis Prime, Ryland watched in silence. His officers looked to him, some with satisfaction, others with unease. Harrow finally broke the silence. "Sir, these are civilians, non-combatants." Ryland's gaze never faltered. "When they burned Europa, did they spare our civilians? When they slaughtered colonies, did they spare our children? They taught us this war. We are only answering in their language." Harrow's throat tightened, but he said nothing more. The Kavari home world's defenses collapsed within hours. The once proud empire was reduced to ash, their fleets shattered, their cities burning, their arrogance drowned in human fire. When the bombardment ended, the planet was a grave. Black smoke billowed into its atmosphere, visible even from orbit. Billions were dead, their voices silenced beneath the steel of humanity's vengeance. On the command deck, Ryland turned from the glass. His voice was cold, merciless. "Signal to all empires," he ordered. "Send this message. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. We are coming one empire at a time, and we will not stop until the galaxy kneels." The officer hesitated, then transmitted the message. Across the void, alien worlds trembled. In the council chamber, chaos erupted once more. "They annihilated Kavari Prime," a delegate shrieked. "An entire empire reduced to ash." "This is genocide," another cried, wings trembling. "The humans are monsters." "No," the Shuran ambassador said, his feathers sleek. "The humans are only what you made them. You burned their homes, slaughtered their people, mocked their pain, and now you are surprised they repay it in kind." "Then they must be destroyed," High Consul Zith roared, though his voice cracked with fear. "Every empire, every fleet must unite again. If we do not crush them now, the galaxy is lost." But even as he spoke, whispers spread among the delegates. Some empires no longer trusted the Council. Some questioned whether humanity could be bargained with instead of fought. The fractures deepened. Humanity had done more than destroy the Cavalry. They had shattered the galaxy's unity. Even the Cavalry's own enemies are calling this genocide now. Humanity's inner circle is starting to ask the exact question I think you might be asking too: is this justice, or has it gone too far? That question comes up directly in the next scene. Back aboard Aegis Prime, the Warworlds gathered. Their crews were weary, their faces lined with grief and fury, but their resolve was unbroken. Ryland stood once more on the command deck, staring into the void. "They called us vermin," he said softly. "They thought we would beg for scraps. They thought we would die quietly in the dark. But we are still here, stronger than ever. And we will carve our place into this galaxy no matter how much blood it takes." Harrow's voice was quiet but heavy. "And if we lose ourselves in the process, Commander, what will we become?" Ryland turned, his eyes burning like steel. "We become what we must because survival is not enough. Not anymore. This is our war now, and we will finish it." The Warworlds turned their engines once more, their shadows stretching across the stars. One empire had fallen, more would follow. And as they moved deeper into the galaxy, fear spread like fire. Entire civilizations trembled at the thought of human steel darkening their skies. For centuries, the galaxy had believed in its own superiority, its own arrogance. Now it whispered a new truth. Humanity had risen. Humanity was coming, and nothing could stop them. "We become what we must." That line is going to matter a lot by the end of this. 2 more empires fall from here, and then we get to the final battle of the entire war. If you've made it this far, comment "Endgame" because we're heading there now. The galaxy had changed. Where once the Council ruled with arrogance and certainty, now fear reigned. Every system whispered of Saul's fire. Every world trembled at the thought of 6 warworlds darkening their skies. Humanity's vengeance had spread like wildfire, and no empire could ignore it. The Cavalry were gone, burned from history in fire and steel. Their proud fleets lay in ruins, their cities turned to ash. What remained of their people were scattered refugees crawling through the void with no home, no empire, no pride. Their annihilation sent a message clearer than any words. The age of alien dominance was over. But the galaxy was vast, and arrogance was not so easily extinguished. The council chamber reeked of desperation. Once proud, its crystal towers glistened with cracks, its delegates shouting over one another, their voices laced with panic. "The humans have crossed the line into genocide," an Avon ambassador shrieked, wings trembling. "If they continue, no species will be spared." "They will not stop," the insectoid viceroy hissed, mandibles clicking furiously. "They will burn us all unless we unite." "Unite?" a crystalline matriarch scoffed, though even her shimmering body dulled with fear. "Our fleets are shattered, our defense is broken. Unite with what? Fear, desperation. The humans will not be swayed." High Consul Zith slammed his claws into the podium, scales dulled, voice cracked with strain. "Then we give them no choice. We call upon every world, every empire, every fragment of power left. This war is no longer about dominance. It is survival." But whispers filled the chamber. Not all agreed. Some spoke of treaties, of seeking peace with humanity before the fire reached them. Others spoke of betrayal, of abandoning the council altogether to save their own species. For centuries, arrogance had united them. Now fear was tearing them apart. The council is falling apart from the inside, but humanity's war machine doesn't stop. 2 more empires are about to burn. Comment which one you think falls next, insects or crystal. In the cold void, humanity's warworlds moved relentlessly forward. The Aegis Prime led, its scarred hull gleaming with fresh plating, its cannons reloaded, its reactors humming with vengeance. Behind it, the Iron Requiem, Leviathan, Oblivion Crown, Hellborn, and Titans, wrath advanced as one. Steel gods dragging their shadows across the galaxy. They struck at the insectoid viceroy's border systems first. Fleets rose to meet them, but fleets shattered under their fire. Cities burned, defenses crumbled, empires trembled. Ryland stood on the command deck, watching as another alien world fell into flame. Reports flooded in, casualties, victories, civilian deaths. His officers whispered among themselves, some celebrating, others silent with unease. Harrow finally spoke. "Sir, with respect, we've destroyed 3 worlds this month. Civilian populations in the billions. Soldiers, yes, but children too, innocents. How many more before were no different from them?" The command deck fell silent. All eyes turned to Ryland. His face was stone. His eyes burned with the fury of a man who had seen Earth burn, who had carried the screams of Europa's children for decades. "Innocents?" he asked softly, but his voice was a blade. "Did the Council spare ours when they burned our colonies? Did they hesitate when they bombed cities, slaughtered families, wiped out generations? They taught us this war. We are only speaking it back to them." Harrow swallowed hard but pressed on. "And when it's over, when they're ash, what will we be then?" Ryland's gaze lingered on him, unblinking. "Alive, that's what we'll be. Alive when they meant us to be dust. If that is monstrous, then let history call us monsters." No one spoke after that, but the whispers spread. Within the Warworlds, soldiers began to murmur of doubt. Families questioned the endless bombardments. Some spoke of justice turning to cruelty, vengeance to annihilation. Others silenced them, their rage burning too hot to care. And Ryland carried it all. Every doubt, every scream, every grave, they weighed on him. Yet he did not falter. He could not. Humanity had no choice but to push forward. Let history call us monsters. Genuinely, is he right, or has he lost the plot completely? I want real answers in the comments on this one, because the story is about to force him to answer it too. The insected Viceroy fell next. Their hive worlds, once teeming with swarms, collapsed under human fire. Orbital strikes shattered their nests. Plasma storms burned through their warrens. Rail slugs cracked their planet's crusts. Billions of insected bodies littered the void, their swarms silenced in fire. The Viceroy itself died screaming as the Oblivion Crown ripped its fortress into molten fragments. Another empire erased. Another grave carved into the galaxy. In the council chamber, fear deepened. "They are unstoppable," a delegate wailed. "2 empires destroyed in weeks. Who will be next? Ours, yours, peace," some cried. "Send envoys, beg forgiveness before it is too late." "Fools," others shouted. "There is no peace with predators. If we kneel, they will still kill us." The chamber devolved into chaos. The council that once ruled unchallenged now fractured like glass. And in the shadows, the Shuran ambassador watched, silent, calculating, waiting. Back aboard the Aegis Prime, Ryland stared into the void. His reflection in the glass was hard, scarred, unrecognizable even to himself. Harrow approached cautiously. "Commander, the council is faltering. They're divided. Some want peace. Some want war. If we push harder, they may collapse entirely." Ryland didn't look at him. "Good. Let them collapse. Let them crawl. Let them beg. We will not stop until they understand." Harrow hesitated. "And if peace is offered, if they surrender?" For a moment, silence filled the deck. Ryland's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. Memories surged, Earth skies burning, Europa's children screaming, Martian colonies drowning in fire. He remembered the laughter of alien commanders as humanity begged for mercy. His hand curled into a fist. "If peace is offered," he said at last, his voice low, "then it will be on our terms, not theirs. Never theirs." The Warworlds pressed deeper. Another empire fell. Cities burned. Worlds turned to rubble. The galaxy trembled with every step humanity took. But inside the steel hearts of the Warworlds, doubt gnawed at men's souls. Were they still fighting for survival, or had they become executioners? Ryland stood at the center of it all, a man caught between vengeance and the shadow of becoming what he hated most. His people looked to him as their shield, their blade, their leader. And he could not falter even as the weight threatened to crush him. For in the end, one truth remained. The galaxy had tried to kill humanity, and humanity would never forgive. We're heading into the last battle now, the Council's final stand. This is the ending, and it is not a clean one. If you've made it this far, comment "Final Stand," because I want to know exactly how many of you are still here. The galaxy bled. Worlds smoldered where humanity's war worlds had passed. Empires that once ruled unchallenged now drifted as ruins, their fleets shattered, their arrogance crushed. Refugees swarmed across the void, carrying whispers of a new order, an order forged in fire, carried by 6 steel gods that darkened the skies wherever they went. The Council had once been eternal. Now it was cornered prey. On the Council's core world, chaos reigned. The once proud crystal towers of its assembly glittered with cracks, its delegates shouting over one another in desperation. Fear had replaced arrogance. Survival replaced pride. They have destroyed the Cavalry, the insectoid hives, the viceroy swarms. An Avan ambassador shrieked, wings tremble. Every empire they touch burns. They will not stop until we are all ash. Peace, cried a crystalline matriarch, her shimmering body dimmed with terror. Send envoys, offer surrender before it is too late. Peace, Zith roared, his scales dulled but his fury unbroken. You would kneel before vermin. You would give our galaxy to primitives with iron toys. No, if we are to die, we die as rulers, not cowards. But his words no longer carried the same weight. Once his arrogance had ruled the chamber. Now it cracked like brittle stone. Whispers spread among the delegates. Whispers of betrayal, of surrender, of escape. The Council's unity was gone. Still, desperation birthed action. Fleets were called, remnants gathered, allies forced into service. The Council would not simply bow. They would fight one last time, the last stand of the galaxy. This is it, the Council's absolute last stand. Everything they have left, against everything humanity built. Comment fire last stand and let's watch it happen. In the cold void, the Warworlds gathered. The Aegis Prime floated at their center, its scarred surface glimmering with fresh plating, its cannons humming, its reactors burning like suns around it. The Iron Requiem, Leviathan, Oblivion Crown, Hellborn, and Titans, wrath aligned in silence. Inside Aegis Prime, Commander Rylan stood before his officers. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, yet burning with a fire that refused to die. The weight of every grave, every death, every scream pressed on his shoulders, yet still he stood. The Council has gathered what remains of their fleets, Harrow reported, his voice heavy. 30,000 ships, maybe more, desperate, fractured, but armed. They're waiting at the core. Ryland's eyes narrowed. Good. Then this ends where it began, in their heart. Harrow hesitated. Sir, this could end the galaxy. Billions will die. Entire civilizations will collapse. And if we push too far, they pushed first. Ryland's gaze cut through him. We finish what they began. For Earth, for Mars, for every colony they burned. This war ends on our terms. Silence followed. Every officer knew there was no turning back. The Warworlds entered the Council's core system. The void exploded with fire. 30,000 ships surged forward, weapons blazing. The last breath of empires desperate to survive. Dreadnoughts larger than cities fired sun-cracking beams. Swarm fleets filled the dark with kinetic storms. Fortress ships raised shields that glimmered like false suns. The Warworlds answered. Rail cannons roared, their slugs tearing through dreadnoughts as though they were paper. Plasma lances swept across fleets, burning them into fragments. Missiles streaked through the void like meteors, detonating in storms that ripped formations apart. The Council fought with fury. Humanity fought with vengeance. The void became a graveyard. Fair warning, humanity is about to take real losses in this next part. Comment, not invincible, if you're ready for the moment where this stops feeling like an easy win. Inside Aegis Prime, alarms screamed. The deck shuddered as impacts hammered the shields. Energy flared. Systems groaned. Consoles sparked. Officers barked orders. Soldiers raced through the corridors. Engineers bled to keep reactors burning. Shields down to 60%, an officer shouted. The Leviathan is burning, another cried. They've breached Sector 7. Ryland gripped the railing, teeth clenched. Hold the line, push forward. Through the observation glass, he watched as the Leviathan, scarred and broken, unleashed its final barrage. Plasma storms ripping through swarms even as its hull cracked and fire poured from its wounds. He saw its commander, face streaked with blood, refusing to abandon ship. The Leviathan exploded in a silent scream, its fragments scattering across the void. Millions died in an instant. Ryland's chest tightened, grief slamming into him like a hammer, but his voice did not waver. They gave their lives for this moment. We do not stop. Not now, not ever. The Council's fleets pressed harder, desperation turning to madness. Ships rammed Warworlds, detonating in suicide strikes. Orbital fortresses poured fire, tearing through human plating. The void was filled with screams, wreckage, blood. The Hellborn burned next, its reactors pierced, its heart exploding in a sunbright blast that took 10,000 alien ships with it. Its death lit the void, its sacrifice carving a path for the others. 4 Warworlds remained. Ryland's hands trembled as he gripped the console. Every loss tore at him, every scream hollowed him further, but his voice was still. Forward, always forward. 2 of the 6 Warworlds are gone now. This win isn't free, and I think that's the point of this whole story. Comment if you think it was worth it, right before we see the final outcome. The battle raged for hours. When at last the Council's fleets faltered, only wreckage filled the skies. The core system burned, its planets scarred, its fleets destroyed. Of 30,000 ships, fewer than 3,000 limped away. Humanity had won. But at what cost? The Leviathan and Hellborn were gone. Millions dead. Billions more across alien worlds burned. The Warworlds that survived were scarred, bleeding, barely holding together. And Ryland stood in silence, staring into the wreckage. On the ground, the Council chamber lay in ruins, its towers burned, its delegates scattered or dead. High Consul Zith, scales dulled, face scarred, stood trembling before the wreckage of his empire. A transmission filled the chamber. Ryland's face appeared on the screen, scarred, hollow, eyes burning with fire that no galaxy could extinguish. "This war is over," he said. "The Council is broken. Your fleets are gone. Your worlds burn. Humanity stands." Zith snarled, his pride flickering even in defeat. "Monster, you have slaughtered billions. You are no better than us." For a moment, silence hung. Then Ryland's voice cut like steel. "No, we are worse because we remember, because we endured what you gave us and we gave it back tenfold. You called us vermin, you mocked us as weak. Now you kneel before the vermin you once scorned." Zith spat, his claws shaking. "Then kill us, finish it, end us, monster." He has the power to end an entire civilization right now with one order. This is the last decision of the whole story. Comment what you think he does, mercy or extinction, before you find out. Ryland's gaze lingered, heavy with centuries of grief and rage. His hand hovered over the console. He could give the order. He could erase the Council from existence. He could burn the galaxy clean and carve humanity's throne in its ashes. But then in his mind he saw the boy from Aegis Prime, the boy who had clutched a photograph of his dead father. He saw the faces of the families who cried, who doubted, who whispered of mercy. He saw Earth's graves, Mars's ashes, Europa's screams. And he saw what humanity was becoming. His voice dropped softer but heavier. "No, you don't get the mercy of death. You live knowing your arrogance was your ruin. You live knowing humanity broke you, and you live under our shadow forever." Zith's face twisted in fury, in fear, but he said nothing. Ryland cut the transmission. The Warworlds drifted in silence, scarred, broken, victorious. Humanity had won. The Council was shattered. The galaxy trembled beneath their shadow. Inside Aegis Prime, Ryland stood alone at the observation glass, staring into the void. His reflection looked back at him. A man carved by grief, scarred by vengeance, hardened by fire. Harrow approached quietly. "It's over, sir. We've won." Ryland didn't turn. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "No, this is only the beginning. We've survived. We've conquered. But what we've become," he trailed off, his eyes heavy, his chest tight. "Maybe something the galaxy never forgets or forgives." The void stared back, silent and eternal, and humanity's war worlds drifted on, titans of steel, their shadows stretching across the stars. The galaxy's arrogance had collapsed. But in its place, a new fear was born, the fear of humanity.